The Caja Magica in Madrid is not just a tennis stadium. It is a fortress built of steel and glass and arrogance. It is the absolute peak of the European tennis elite. For decades, this space has been dominated by deep traditions and unwritten rules where outsiders from across the globe are rarely welcomed. You walk through those heavy gates and you immediately feel the crushing weight of tennis history pressing down on you. It is a world of quiet applause, polite nods, and pristine white towels. The luxury suites are filled with generations of European wealth and corporate power. The players are entirely accustomed to a system built specifically for their comfort. But in 2026, that fortress shook to its core. It did not just shake because of a powerful baseline game. It shook because an unprecedented energy arrived straight from Southeast Asia. This is the story of how Alex Eala did not just win tennis matches. She brought the absolute fire of Philippine pride right into the center of the tennis establishment. She forced the most traditional sport on earth to recognize her roots. Let us rewind for a second. Close your eyes and think about the perfectly manicured red clay courts of Spain. The weather is crisp, the facilities are flawless. Now compare that to the blazing tropical heat of Manila. Picture the local public courts where the humidity is so thick, you can barely breathe. The contrast is absolutely staggering. The journey from those local courts in the Philippines to the most exclusive locker rooms in Europe is not a normal career path. It is a statistical anomaly. How does a young girl from Southeast Asia step into the most rigid arena in the world and force them to play by her cultural rules? The answer is completely unexpected. But to understand this historic earthquake at the Madrid Open, we have to go back to where everything started. We must look at a place where the dream of conquering the professional tennis tour sounded less like a career goal and more like wild science fiction. Back in Manila, the road to professional tennis is not paved with massive sponsorship deals. There are no luxury training camps waiting for young athletes. The journey is built on something completely different. It is built on puso. That is the powerful Tagalog word for heart. It is the absolute core of Philippine resilience. In this vibrant culture, your family is the only safety net you have. Alex grew up surrounded by a deeply athletic family that understood the brutal reality of sports. They knew that raw talent was never going to be enough to break out of the region. Think about the sheer financial gap for a moment. A young player born in France or Spain can drive a few hours to play in dozens of professional tournaments. They sleep in their own beds. They eat their own food. Their parents sit in the stands and cheer in their native language. Alex had to cross oceans just to get a seat at the table. Every single flight was a massive financial risk. Every single tournament entry felt like a life or death situation for her young career. She could not afford to just play for fun. She spent thousands of hours sweating on those local courts. She hit endless buckets of balls under a punishing tropical sun. There were no million-dollar recovery rooms. There was just pure, unrelenting hunger and a close community that fiercely believed in her potential. Every single drop of sweat on those courts was fueled by the desire to put the Philippines on the global tennis map. But raw talent eventually hits a ceiling. To reach the absolute highest level of the sport, Alex had to make a choice that would break almost any normal teenager. She had to leave everything she loved. Imagine being a young girl packing your bags and flying across the globe to the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. You are suddenly dropped into a hyper-competitive European machine. The culture shock is massive and immediate. The warm, beautiful chaos of Manila is instantly replaced by cold discipline and extreme isolation. Every morning began before the sun even considered rising. The only sound was the relentless thud of tennis balls echoing against the high academy walls. She spent her evenings in a quiet dorm room staring at the ceiling, thousands of miles away from everything familiar. She missed the vibrant noise of her hometown streets. She deeply missed the comfort of sharing a simple home-cooked meal of adobo with her family after a brutally exhausting day. The physical pain of elite training was absolutely nothing compared to the emotional weight of homesickness. Growing up is hard enough for any teenager. Growing up entirely alone while carrying the heavy expectations of a massive island nation on your young shoulders is practically suffocating. She was surrounded by European prodigies who had grown up, playing on these very clay courts since they could walk. They knew the language natively. They understood the unwritten social rules of the prestigious locker rooms. They belonged there by default. Alex, on the other hand, had to learn how to survive in a system that was fundamentally not built for her success. Every single day was a quiet mental battle to prove she deserved a spot on that court. She was adapting to the rigorous training. She was getting noticeably physically stronger. She was meticulously learning the European way of playing professional tennis. But in the process of surviving this alien environment, she was also slowly leaving vital pieces of herself behind. She started to quiet her natural fire to fit into the polite molds of European tennis. If you have ever been the only outsider in a room full of privilege, you know exactly how heavy that isolation feels. If you want to see how she completely broke out of that dark isolation and turned her deepest cultural struggle into her absolute greatest weapon, join our community by hitting that subscribe button right now. She brought all of that quiet suffering to the massive arenas of Europe. No one warned her about the terrifying reality waiting ahead. The hardest obstacle in her young career was not going to be the fierce topspin or the blistering serves of her rivals. The real nightmare was a creeping, invisible barrier that threatened to erase her true identity completely. There is a cruel secret in professional tennis that you rarely see on television broadcasts. The entire system is fundamentally not designed for someone like Alex Eala to succeed. Stepping into the massive European tournaments is terrifying for an outsider. The deep isolation does not just come from lacking a massive corporate team of physiotherapists and data analysts. The true isolation comes from the deeply unsettling feeling that you simply do not belong in the room. In the brutal months leading up to the 2026 Madrid Open, the mental pressure was completely suffocating her. She was quietly carrying the heavy hopes of over 100 million people back home in the Philippines. Every single loss felt like a massive betrayal to her entire country. But the professional tour is a cold and unforgiving machine that does not care about your personal story. The elite European and American players walked around the locker rooms with a natural swagger. They knew how to navigate the complex social politics of the tour. They knew exactly how to demand instant respect from the umpires and the wealthy tournament directors. Alex desperately tried to adapt to this terrifying environment. She tried to mold herself into that rigid Western image of a professional tennis player. She believed that to win on their courts, she had to act entirely like them. She started playing much safer tennis. She actively quieted her natural aggressive instincts and silenced the raw emotional fire that defined her entire childhood in Manila. She was trying so incredibly hard to play like a textbook European clay court specialist. The result was an absolute disaster for her game. She was completely losing her unique rhythm. She was actively trading her explosive Southeast Asian agility for a stiff and highly predictable baseline game. She thought she was maturing as a professional athlete. In reality, she was just erasing her own identity to make the European tennis establishment feel more comfortable. You can only pretend to be someone else for so long before your spirit completely breaks. Just weeks before Madrid, she suffered a heartbreaking and deeply symbolic defeat at a smaller European clay tournament. The conditions were absolutely miserable. The red clay was heavy from the spring rain and the European crowd was fiercely cheering for their local veteran player. Alex was actually up a crucial break in the final set. She had the entire match firmly in her hands. But when the tension reached its absolute peak, she completely froze. She stopped trusting her own weapons. Instead of attacking the ball with her natural ferocity, she tentatively pushed it back over the net. She was playing not to lose instead of playing to win. The veteran opponent easily punished her hesitation. The crowd politely clapped for the local favorite while Alex walked off the court looking completely empty. She was physically drained and her spirit was entirely broken. She had tried so incredibly hard to fit into the elite club that she completely forgot the incredible power of who she actually was. The locker room after that specific loss was devastatingly quiet. She packed her tennis bags in total silence, while the European players chatted loudly in foreign languages around her. The ultimate dream of conquering the elite clay season looked completely impossible. The tennis critics were already whispering that perhaps the massive leap from an Asian junior champion to a true European professional contender was just too vast for her. Everything seemed to be rapidly falling apart. The weight of her entire nation felt less like a motivation and more like an anchor, dragging her directly to the bottom of the ocean. But right at the absolute lowest point of her professional career, facing tens of thousands of hostile fans in Madrid, Alex made a drastic decision that permanently altered the trajectory of modern tennis history. Round 2 at the 2026 Madrid Open presented the ultimate nightmare scenario. She was completely exhausted and trailing by a set and a break against a heavily favored top 10 superstar. The air inside the Caja Magica was absolutely electric for the home favorite. The elite VIP boxes were packed with wealthy sponsors and tennis royalty. They were all just comfortably waiting for the inevitable mental collapse of the young challenger from Southeast Asia. They expected her to quietly accept her defeat and pack her bags like a polite guest. That was the exact beautiful moment the internal switch finally flipped. Alex stared down at the red dirt covering her shoes. She took a massive deep breath and stopped trying to be the perfect polished player the European elite wanted to see. She made a conscious and radical choice to bring her raw, authentic Southeast Asian roots directly onto the court. She stopped hitting those safe, looping balls. Hamu. She flattened out her massive forehand with terrifying, aggressive pace. She started moving with the chaotic, explosive energy that she originally learned on the cracked public hard courts of Manila. She was sliding aggressively into deep corners and fiercely retrieving heavy balls that no European player would ever even attempt to chase down. The polite and predictable rhythm of the match was violently shattered in a matter of minutes. She started hitting these insane angles that completely defied traditional tennis logic. Have you ever faced a terrifying moment in your own life where you had to completely abandon the expectations of others to finally find your true power? Let me know about your own personal breakthrough down in the comments, because that exact realization of raw authenticity is what shifted the entire universe for Alex on that clay court. She stopped playing their rigid game and forced them to survive inside her storm. The European superstar across the net was visibly rattled by this sudden explosion of pure energy. The massive Spanish crowd slowly went from roaring cheers to a stunned, uncomfortable silence. They were witnessing a complete mental and physical takeover. Alex broke serve with a blistering return winner down the line. Then she held her own serve at love. Then she broke the serve of her opponent again. Every single time she ripped a clean winner past the racket. Of the local favorite, she let out a visceral, piercing shout. It was not a polite, scripted fist pump for the television cameras. It was pure, unfiltered puso. It was the fierce, undeniable warrior spirit of the Philippines, echoing loudly through the most prestigious sporting arena in Spain. The energy shifted so violently that you could actually feel the panic setting in across the stadium. The European coaches sitting in the front rows folded their arms defensively. They were watching a complete dismantling of their traditional tactics. Alex was no longer just a young girl hoping to belong in the elite circle. She was an absolute force of nature actively tearing the door completely off its hinges. When she fiercely smashed the final match point away to complete the massive comeback, she completely dropped her racket to the clay. She looked directly up into the massive stands with eyes full of absolute, unyielding fire. She had completely shattered the grand illusion of European dominance on that specific court. The wealthy tennis establishment sitting high up in the VIP boxes had absolutely no choice but to sit back and watch her celebrate with pure, unadulterated cultural passion. That dramatic victory was absolutely not just a massive shock on the tournament scoreboard. It was the powerful spark that instantly ignited a cultural earthquake the professional tennis tour had never truly witnessed before. What happened next was an absolute masterclass in turning crushing pressure into raw fuel. The Caja Magica suddenly transformed in ways the tournament organizers never anticipated in their wildest dreams. It was no longer just a quiet stadium filled with polite aristocratic applause and casual wealthy fans. The massive concrete bowls of the arena exploded with vibrant red, white, blue, and yellow colors. The deeply passionate Filipino community from all across Europe descended upon Madrid to witness absolute history in the making. They drove for days and bought every single available ticket to support their rising star. Their deafening cheers and relentless loud energy completely drowned out the traditional silence of the wealthy elite VIP boxes. Alex directly fed off that massive wave of authentic cultural pride. She went on an absolute tear through the incredibly difficult tournament draw. She systematically dismantled elite seeded players one by one, with a level of aggression no one had ever seen from her before. The crowd roared with every explosive forehand she violently struck. But the most incredible transformation happened completely off the red clay court. She entirely stopped shrinking herself in front of the notoriously hostile and judgmental European sports media. When elite journalists sitting in crowded press conferences asked her about her highly unique playing style, she did not give them safe, generic answers meant to please the corporate sponsors. She proudly and loudly spoke about her deep roots in Manila. She spoke about the incredible resilience of her family and her people back home. She aggressively forced the global tennis press to recognize and respect her specific Asian heritage. This was not just a temporary winning streak on the clay. It was a complete and total cultural takeover of a deeply traditional and highly guarded space. Her forehand became a terrifying and highly unpredictable weapon that completely broke the spirit of her opponents. Tennis analysts later dug deep into the raw tournament tracking data and found an absolutely mind-blowing statistic that the television commentators completely missed during the live broadcast. When Alex faced critical breakpoints in Madrid, her average racket swing speed did not drop from nervous tension. It actually spiked by a massive 15%. The paralyzing fear of losing a tennis match was completely replaced by the sheer adrenaline of fighting for the heavy pride of her flag. Most professional players completely tighten up their muscles and choke when their back is heavily pressed against the wall. Alex swung even harder. She hit a ridiculous 24 clean winners on crucial defensive points throughout the second week of the tournament alone. She was violently punishing the elite establishment with every single fierce strike of the heavy yellow tennis ball. The European tennis elite simply had absolutely no tactical or mental answer for someone who weaponized her own unique identity so perfectly. She forced the entire wealthy sporting world to sit down and watch her dominate completely on her own aggressive terms. The energy in the stadium was absolutely electric and deeply intoxicating. She broke the rigid tennis establishment. But the massive ripple effects of this historic tournament run in Madrid stretch far beyond a single heavy silver trophy sitting quietly on a shelf. Madrid 2026 will always be remembered as the exact moment an entirely new culture kicked down. The heavy wooden door to the elite tennis living room and flat out refused to leave the premises. Alex Eala did not just win a massive tournament for herself or her dedicated coaching team. She violently shattered a massive invisible ceiling that hovered over every single young tennis player from a developing nation for decades. She definitively proved that you do not have to abandon your roots or completely copy the sterile Western style to reach the absolute pinnacle of this deeply traditional and highly expensive sport. There are thousands of young kids hitting worn-out tennis balls on cracked public courts in extreme tropical heat right now. They are sweating completely through their shirts in Manila and Jakarta and Bogota. They are watching the viral highlights of her historic run and finally truly believing that they actually belong on the biggest and most prestigious stages in the entire world. Alex fundamentally changed the visual and emotional landscape of professional tennis forever. She brought the raw, chaotic fire of Southeast Asia directly to the pristine red clay of Europe and violently forced everyone to respect it. The global professional tour will simply never be the same. Again, after witnessing such a massive shift in absolute power, the heavy steel gates of the exclusive tennis fortress have finally been smashed completely open for the entire world to see. Alex proved to the entire sporting world that cultural authenticity is the ultimate competitive advantage in modern sports. She showed everyone that hiding your true authentic self is a massive waste of precious mental energy that should be heavily used to hit the ball past your opponent. But this incredible global breakthrough leaves us all looking at an entirely new and highly unpredictable landscape for the future of the sport. The absolute biggest question hanging over the tennis world right now is exactly who will be the next young, fearless underdog to walk boldly through that open door and shock the elite establishment to its very core. We are intensely tracking the rapid rise of these hidden global phenomenons every single week. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel right now so you do not miss our next deep dive into the incredible unknown players who are completely rewriting modern tennis history.